On July 14th, 1874, the city of Chicago experienced what became known as the Little Big Fire or the Second Chicago Fire. You see, on that day, it was 90 degrees. Now, in Texas, 90 degrees is an everyday temperature, but there it was warm. The wind was blowing heavily, and the city had no regulations about building safety. It was a tinderbox and it blew, not for the first time, but for the second time. So let's get into today's lecture. I want to welcome everybody. I think you're really going to enjoy today's lesson. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining me. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe so you can be up to date on all our Royal Black and Elite history. And of course, my Royalers, thank you all so much for joining me every single day. I really appreciate so many who tune in. So let's get into our lesson and let's kind of lay some history groundwork so we can get an idea of what was going on there. So Chicago at the time was growing. You had industry growing, there were railroads, so all kinds of things were growing in the city of in the city of Chicago. If in fact it was one of the fastest growing cities during that time period in the country. So Black people were moving from the South to the North because of the racism that was in the South. This was called the Great Migration. Of course, we have some videos down below. We also have the founder, the man who's known to be the founder of Chicago, a video of him also at the end card. So picture this, Civil War over, Black people getting in their cars, traveling up the road, moving north to Chicago. Now, when they got to Chicago, though it wasn't the blatant racism and running up in your house like they did in the South, it was a different type of discrimination and racism and poverty that met them there. So they were in these cramped little houses, all kind of living together in tenements. The violence was off the chain, and this is where most of the Black people resided. But a little closer to downtown, there was a more mixed community, and within that mixed community were Black middle class people. And they built schools, businesses, churches, and homes. Now, they were struggling, don't get me wrong, don't it wasn't a picket fence situation, but it was better than the tenements that some Black people were living in. Now, this community was really mixed, but they had a good concentration of middle class Blacks, and they were building things. They were struggling. And the first Great Fire happened in 1871. Over 17,000 buildings burned down and 100,000 people were left homeless. Some of this may be triggering y'all. I forgot to say that at the beginning, but people did lose their lives and lose their homes because of these fires. Now, those with means, they rebuilt. But the newly arrived, some who were former slaves, they lost everything. And they lost the little that they had. They didn't have a whole lot to begin with. So as they struggled to recover, tragedy struck once again in 1874 with another major fire that swept through Chicago. Now, the reasons for the fire were really never, ever determined. Some publication, the San Francisco Elevator, they had an article in 1874 that said that it began at a rag shop. Someone else said it started in a second-story frame house. Others said in a small barn. So we don't know really how it started. All we know is that it began and it really swept through the the middle of the city pretty quickly down in the downtown area. Now, some Black people who had businesses at that time and who were prominent, one was named John Jones, and he was a tailor. He lost his home and his business, but he did, get back up on his feet, and he was actually elected to the Board of Commission, so he did keep his career going. There was another man and his wife, and they actually gave out food and helped people during the fire, and his name was Joseph Henry Hudlin. And so they helped during the fire, but it was a hot day and it was windy. The fire swept through. And so even though they don't really know where It actually started by 4:30. A neighbor had called, which was in a Cheyenne district. Are any of you familiar with the Cheyenne district who are from the Chicago area? Does any of this bring back memories to you? Do you know about this? So this is where the fire was called from, and the fire quickly spread to an oil factory. Unfortunately, during that time period, they had a lot of wooden houses right next to oil factories, if you can imagine. And so the mayor took a lot of heat for it. They said it was his fault for laws that he had passed and rules that he had broke, allowed to kind of go. In fact, they were moving wooden houses from the places that had burned down. And if they were able to save any of them in 1871, they had moved them into this district. And so that's why they were there. So a lot of rules were passed after that. There were several stories about, how it started, but the rules were sure and complete, and they did not mess around. One was no more wooden houses, especially not next to oil places. And they also began to do inspections at different businesses and homes and put some requirements around builders and how they built. Now, the total financial loss was almost $2 million in 1874, so close to $1 billion today. Sadly, the Firehouse Engine Company 21, this was the first black fire company in Chicago. It burned down. And the city, it never rebuilt it. I did leave a video down below about the first black fire engine company, so definitely check that out. Now, all these changes really also led to displacement of black people. You see, while they were rebuilding, black people were facing a lot of discrimination. Number one, they weren't getting the money everybody else was getting, so they weren't being treated fairly in the equal distribution of the aid. Number two, they were being discriminated against in the rebuilding practices. And number three, they weren't getting the loans, so they weren't getting the money to rebuild. So that's what the black people were experiencing when they were trying to rebuild again around that downtown area. So what happened to them? Most of them moved south in what is now called the Black Belt. And so Southside Chicago. And then other ones, they kind of dispersed throughout communities that were mixed throughout the city of Chicago. So that's what happened. The Jewish, the Russian, and Polish populations that were also there, they moved more west. So that's what happened. So that is the great second Chicago fire. Did you know that a second fire had burned down the black community and we lost so much? It's sad to see. That's why when they said they were going to raise the taxes on the people in Chicago again, who have lost so much, it's just sad to see what they're going through. They blame the mayor here, what happened here. They're blaming the mayor now, 6%. Approval rating there in Chicago at this present day. So maybe it's not on fire with real fire, but it's on fire in a different way. So Chicago has a lot of news coming out of it. I've left some great videos down below. Tell me what you all think. Have you ever heard of this story before? Do you think this is kind of, like a parallel to what's happening today? I want to thank you all for joining me. As you know, my lectures are for education and entertainment purposes only. And listen, my sources were the second Chicago Fire book, the Henry Allen Hazen's article, The Climate of Change in 1803, and A.T. Andreas, A History of Chicago. That was another article. And if you want to continue learning, click down below, look at my end card. I have a video coming up right here. And I want to thank you for joining me for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. Tell somebody about us, and don't forget to comment. You know I love to hear from you. You all have a great day, and thank you for spending some of your day with me.